What if the biggest threat to Apple's laptop dominance isn't AMD anymore, but Intel finally remembering how to build chips people actually want? For years, the story felt finished. Apple left Intel behind, launched Apple Silicon, and suddenly Windows laptops looked like yesterday's technology. Better battery life, better efficiency, better performance unplugged. It wasn't even close. But after digging through a series of side-by-side comparisons between Apple's latest M4 MacBook Air, Intel's Core Ultra lineup, and AMD's newest AI processors, I'm not convinced that story still holds up the way most people think it does. And one result completely changed my expectations. Let's start with the machine almost everyone expected to win. The MacBook Air M4 continues doing exactly what Apple has been perfecting for years. On paper, its CPU scores beat Intel's Core Ultra 5 225H, outperform AMD's Ryzen AI 7350, and even edge past Apple's own M1 Pro in several synthetic tests. That's impressive by itself, but benchmarks never tell the whole story. What caught my attention wasn't the numbers, it was consistency. Most Windows laptops still lose performance the moment you unplug the charger. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's dramatic. The MacBook Air barely changes at all. Whether it's plugged into the wall or running entirely on battery, performance remains remarkably stable. That's something Apple quietly normalized while much of the PC industry kept treating it like an acceptable compromise. For anyone editing videos in a coffee shop, working on a plane, or simply moving around throughout the day, that difference becomes far more meaningful than another few hundred benchmark points. Then came the video export test. Using DaVinci Resolve, one of the few professional editing applications available across both macOS and Windows, the MacBook Air M4 finished exporting in roughly 8 minutes. Intel's Core Ultra 5? Almost 14 minutes. AMD's Ryzen AI 7350 landed just over 13 minutes. That's not a tiny lead. That's the kind of gap you actually feel every single day if editing content is part of your workflow. What's fascinating is that this wasn't even Apple's Pro lineup. This wasn't an M4 Pro. It wasn't an M4 Max. It was the fanless MacBook Air. That completely changes the conversation around who actually needs Apple's expensive professional machines. One creator mentioned in the testing had already been editing TikTok videos on an original M1 MacBook Air. After upgrading to the M4 Air, the workflow became smoother, exports finished noticeably faster, and everyday editing simply felt effortless. That matters because most creators aren't cutting Hollywood films. They're making shorts, TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube clips. For those workloads, the Air suddenly looks much more capable than many people assumed. Now here's where things become controversial. For years, people loved saying Windows laptops simply offered more power for less money. That argument becomes much harder to defend when a fanless MacBook Air starts outperforming competing Intel and AMD systems in real creative workloads while delivering better battery life at the same time. Is Windows still giving you more flexibility? Absolutely. But flexibility isn't automatically performance, and that's an important distinction. AI workloads reveal another interesting divide. Running local language models through LM Studio, Apple's unified memory architecture continues showing why it exists. The MacBook M4 generated tokens faster than both Intel Core Ultra 5 and AMD Ryzen AI 7350 in the same workload. This isn't just about having a faster GPU. Apple's unified memory allows both the CPU and GPU to access the same high-bandwidth memory pool, reducing bottlenecks that traditional PC architectures still struggle with. Integrated graphics on Intel and AMD simply couldn't leverage their hardware as efficiently during these specific AI tasks. That doesn't mean Intel and AMD are bad at AI. It means Apple built the entire system around it. Battery life reinforces the same pattern. The Windows machines performed well. Around 8 hours under demanding office testing isn't disappointing anymore. In fact, compared to older generations, it's a huge improvement. But the MacBook Air still stretched further. not by an overwhelming margin. Just enough to remind everyone that Apple still owns one of the industry's strongest efficiency advantages. At this point, the conclusion seems obvious. Apple wins. Intel and AMD keep chasing. Except that's exactly where the second comparison changes everything, because Intel showed up with something nobody expected. Core Ultra X9. This isn't just another refresh with slightly higher clock speeds. Intel redesigned both its performance cores and efficiency cores while introducing an improved low-power architecture specifically designed to handle lightweight workloads with dramatically lower energy consumption. That sounds like boring engineering jargon until you see what actually happens. Browsing, office work, streaming, general multitasking. The laptop remains smooth while relying heavily on these new efficiency cores instead of constantly waking the larger performance cores. The result? Battery life jumps dramatically without making the machine feel slower. For years, Intel laptops forced users to choose between performance and endurance. Now those two goals suddenly aren't fighting each other anymore. Single-core performance still belongs to Apple. The M4 and especially the M5 remain incredibly fast. Intel closes the gap, even surpassing AMD's Ryzen AI 9 HX370, but Apple continues leading here. Then multicore arrives, and suddenly the picture flips. Core Ultra X9 overtakes the standard M4. It overtakes the M5. Only Apple's much more expensive M4 Pro stays ahead. That's a major shift because multi-core performance influences rendering, compiling software, encoding media, and countless professional workloads. Intel didn't just catch up. In several scenarios, it pushed past Apple's mainstream chips. Then I reached the graphics benchmarks. Honestly, I expected another Apple victory. Instead, Intel's Arc B390 integrated GPU became one of the biggest surprises in the entire comparison. Historically, integrated Intel graphics were, let's be polite, functional. Nobody bought them for gaming. Nobody praised them for creative work. AMD generally owned that category, while Apple impressed everyone with Apple's silicon graphics. Now Intel suddenly delivers integrated graphics approaching M4 Pro territory while comfortably outperforming standard M4 and M5 GPUs in several tests. No dedicated graphics card, no giant gaming laptop. Just integrated graphics. That changes the equation for thin and light Windows laptops almost overnight. Game performance naturally improves alongside those graphics gains. Nobody should expect RTX 4060 levels. That's unrealistic, but finally being able to enjoy modern AAA games at reasonable settings on an ultra-thin productivity laptop? That's something Intel simply couldn't offer before. Video exporting produced another shock. The Core Ultra X9 machine finished DaVinci Resolve exports faster than every Apple laptop in the comparison, except a Windows system equipped with an RTX 4060. Think about that. Apple spent years building an incredible reputation around media engines. Intel just delivered export times that compete directly with them using integrated graphics alone. That's not marketing. That's measurable performance. Local AI testing becomes more complicated. Smaller language models run surprisingly well on Intel's new architecture. Larger models expose Apple's unified memory advantage once again. As models grow from 4 billion parameters to 12 billion and beyond, Apple's enormous memory bandwidth increasingly separates itself from conventional PC memory designs. Intel remains competitive. Apple remains more efficient. Both statements can be true simultaneously. Battery life became perhaps the biggest surprise of all. The tested Intel system delivered nearly 13 hours under office-style workloads. That's not just good for Intel. That's genuinely excellent by any standard. Remember where Intel laptops were only a few years ago? 7 or 8 hours felt respectable. 9 hours impressed people. Now we're discussing numbers approaching, and in some configurations even rivaling. What made MacBooks famous in the first place? And perhaps the most overlooked improvement? Performance while unplugged. older Intel laptops often dropped noticeable amounts of speed once disconnected from power. The Core Ultra X9 barely changed. That's a huge quality of life improvement, because users shouldn't have to wonder whether they're getting a slower computer simply because they left their charger at home. Here's what fascinates me most after seeing both comparisons. Apple didn't suddenly become worse. The M4 MacBook Air remains one of the easiest laptop recommendations available today. Excellent battery life, outstanding efficiency, fast video editing, strong AI performance, quiet operation, great value considering the hardware. But Intel stopped playing defense. For the first time in years, Intel isn't asking consumers to overlook obvious weaknesses. Instead, it's attacking categories Apple used to dominate almost uncontested: creative workloads, battery life, integrated graphics, efficiency, even unplugged performance. AMD now finds itself in an uncomfortable position too. Its Ryzen AI processors remain strong products, but in these comparisons, they often land between Apple and Intel without clearly owning a category. That's a dangerous place to be when both competitors are rapidly evolving from opposite directions. The biggest misconception may no longer be that Apple Silicon destroyed Intel forever. The bigger question now is whether Apple can stay comfortably ahead once Intel's next generation arrives, and this pace of improvement continues.
If you enjoy this video, click like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.